So it's recording that one as well. All right, so it says find the GCF of the list of terms. So when you work on, and this is topic one, so when you work on topic one, you'll see something like this. Number one, you'll see something like it says 6x squared, comma, 9x to the fourth, and then negative 12x to the fifth. All right, so if you want to find the GCF, remember GCF means greatest common factor. So what you need to do first is look at the coefficients. So you have a 6, a 9, and a negative 12. So you're trying to find the largest number that 6, 9, and negative 12 have in common. Okay, and if you notice that 6, 9, and negative 12 are all divisible by 3. And in fact, 3 is the largest. So don't say 6 because 6 does not go to 9. Although 6 goes into negative 12, 6 does not go to 9 evenly. So right now, in terms of that coefficient, the GCF will be a 3. So 3 is the largest common factor of 6, 9, and negative 12. And another common factor is 1. So if you talk about common factors, so your common factors of those three numbers is 1 and 3. And the greatest of those is 3. So that's why you say 3 here. Now the variables are easy. So you see you have x to the 12th, x to the 4th, x to the 5th. The greatest common factor, always use the one with the smallest exponent. So your greatest common factor here is 3x squared. And there's your answer. Now that's going to be important when you start factoring, because one of the things you have to do when you factor is, first of all, look for the greatest common factor. But that's how you find the greatest common factor of variables and coefficients. So if you look at number 2, we have negative 16y, that's a y. We have negative 20y to the 6th, and we have a positive 40y to the 4th. So if you look at negative 16, negative 20, and 40, if you think about the common factors of negative 16, negative 20, and 40, they are 1. 1's a factor of every number. 2, see, they're all even, right? So 2 is also a common factor. 4 is a common factor because 4 goes into negative 16, 4 goes into negative 20, 4 goes into 40. And let's see, that's about it, right? Y'all agree that's about it? So if you say 10, you got to be careful. 10 goes into negative 20 and 10 goes into 40, but 10 does not go to negative 16 evenly. So in terms of common factors, those are the 3 common factors. You want to pick the largest. So this will be the largest. So far the GCF of those 3 terms in terms of the coefficient is 4. Now let's look at the variable. Remember we talked about this. For the variables, always use the one with the smallest exponent. So this is a 1, this is a 6, this is a 4. So we can be the one with the 1. So it'll be y. And so that will be your answer there. Okay? And number 3, we have negative 6x squared, y, 3x cubed y squared, and then 18 x to the 4th, y to the 5th. So if you look at the coefficients, negative 6, 3, and 18, see that one's easy because 3 is the smallest of those, and 3 goes into all of these, negative 6 and 18. So the GCF is 3. Okay, let's talk about the variables. You have x's in every term. You have an x in every term. So therefore, you're going to have an x in your GCF. But pick the one with the smallest exponent. This is x squared. This is x cubed. This is x to the 4th. So you're going to choose x squared. You have a y in every term. So you're going to need a y. The question is, how many do you need? You have 1 here, 2 here, 5 here. So you need 1. Pick the one with the smallest exponent. So that's your GCF. And real quickly, just suppose you had this. Let's suppose you had a b squared, comma, 2a squared b cubed, comma, and then let's say 4 a cubed. All right. So if you look at the coefficients, this is a 1. Right here, it's understood to be a 1. This is a 2. This is a 4. Remember, that's understood to be a 1. So the GCF of 1, 2, and 4 is 1. Okay. Times, now let's look at the variable. I have an A in every term. So I'm going to need an A in my GCF. The question is, how many do I need? I have 1 here, 2 here, 3 here. Oh, yeah, 3 here. So I'm going to use one of them. So I just need 1. Now let's look at the B's. I have B here, some B's here, but none here. I don't have any. So there's not going to be any B's in your GCF. So your GCF is just 1 times A, which is A. All right, so that's how you find the GCF of a list of terms. And that's going to be important when we start looking at factoring. So let's get to number 2. So number 2 says this, number 2. So it says factor, it'll say factor each of the following. All right, so factor each of the following. All right, number 1, let's call that A. I'm going to call it A, 2A. So 2A, we have 4x cubed plus 12x. So we have this polynomial, and there are 2 terms here. So the first thing you want to do is look for a GCF. All right, see if there's a GCF other than 1. So we have 4 and 12. The greatest common factor of 4 and 12 is 4. And then we have x's in both terms. So I'm going to need an x in here. Question is, how many do I need? What does that exponent need to be? Well, I have a 3 here, a 1 here, so I need a 1. Always use the one with the smallest exponent, so that's your GCF. Now be careful, that's not your answer. It says factor the following. So your answer is going to be this. All right, so you're going to say, you're going to put the GCF in front. So GCF times something that will give this back. And so to figure out what goes here, here's all you got to do. Just think about the distributive property. Think about the distributive property. 4x times what will give me 4x cubed? And the question is, and the answer is x squared. Because remember, when you multiply like bases, you add exponents. X times x squared is x cubed. So you're using the idea of that distributive property. So when you factor, you're going to put your GCF in front. And so that's multiplication right here. 4x times, and then figure out what goes here to give this back. So we have a plus sign, and then 4x times 3. 4x times 3, if you think about it, 4x times 3 is 12x. And so that's your answer. So that's what you would write. Okay? In part B, let's say we had this in part B. We had 6a cubed b plus 3a cubed b squared minus 9a squared b to the 4th. So I have 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. I have 3 terms. So let's do the coefficients. I have a 6, a 3, and a negative 9. So the GCF of 6, 3, and negative 9 is 3. Now let's go to the variables. I have a's in every term. This is cubed, this is cubed, this is squared. So you're going to need the smallest one, squared. So it'll be a squared. And you have b's in every term. B to the first, b to the second, b to the 4th. So you can use it with the smallest exponent, b. So that's your GCF. So remember, though, it says factor, so that's not your answer. You gotta factor this. So then you're going to rewrite this as the GCF, put that in front, times something in here that will give this back. See, you have 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. You're going to need 3 terms in here. All right, now think about this. 3 times 2 is 6. Remember the distributive property. 3 times 2, so I'm going to do 2 here. A squared, remember I want a cubed, right? So a squared times a is a cubed. And b, I already see that's b. This was a b. I already took it out, so I don't need a b anymore. So if you put a b here, if you put a b, b times b is b squared. That's not what this was. This was b. All right, so all you got here is 2a. Plus 3 times 1 is 3. I'm not going to put the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. A squared times a is a cubed. A squared times a is a cubed. B, so I need a b squared. B times b is b squared. So that's my second term, 2ab. Minus 3 times 3 is 9. A squared, see this is a squared, so I've already factored out the a squared. So don't put an a here. If you put an a here, a squared times a is a cubed, and that's not what that is. So you've already taken out the a squared, so don't put any a's right here. B times b cubed, because remember, you multiply like bases, b times b cubed. When you multiply like bases, you add exponents. 1 plus 3 is 4. All right, so that's what goes here, and there's your answer. You're done with that. All right, so on the worksheet, when on that part, it's going to say factors of the following. Always look for GCF, and then you're going to put the GCF out in front, and you're going to write as a product. You're going to write as a product. So that's what factoring is. You're rewriting this polynomial as a product of other factors. All right, so let's do number 3. So this is going to be part 3. Now, one of the things that they're going to ask you to do on that worksheet is this. So the directions will say this. So just let me remind you what to do there. So it's going to say factor out. So it's going to factor out a factor, factor out a factor with a negative coefficient. With a negative coefficient. All right, so factor out a factor with a negative coefficient. And so it'll look like this. It'll say something like negative 5ab plus 10a. And so what they want you to do is see when we did these right here, the GCF, that was a positive 4x, that was a positive 12x, I'm sorry, that was a positive 3a squared b. So all these right here were positive. You see the GF was positive, the GCF was positive. Over here, the GCF was positive, and so on. What they want you to do, though, in this one is to make the GCF negative. So what I would do is this. Look at negative 5 and look at 10. So in terms of negative 5 and 10, 5 goes into negative 5 and 5 goes into 10. But instead of putting a 5 here, put negative 5. And that's all they want. And then let's go to the variables. I have a's in both of them. A to the first, a to the first, so it'll be a to the first. Don't put any b's because even though there's a b here, there's no b here. So there's not going to be any b's in here. So in terms of the variables, it's got to be in every term. All right, and so there's the answer. Oh, I'm sorry, that's your GCF. Now you're going to factor it out. So your answer is going to be this. You're going to say negative 5a times, just like I did before. So negative 5a, see, you already factored out that negative 5a here. So you only need a b. So b times b. So this times this is this. Okay, now be careful here. Don't put a plus sign because think, distributive property. A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. So make sure you got to be careful when you factor out a negative. If the GCF is negative, if you factor out a negative, you got to be careful with this sign right here. A negative times a negative is a positive. So a negative goes here. Don't put a positive. Don't confuse that with what we did here. See, this was plus, I put plus. This was plus, I put plus. This was minus, I put minus down here. That's because I was factoring a positive GCF. I'm factoring a negative, so you got to be careful. Think of the distributive property. A negative 5a times a positive 5b is a negative 5ab. A negative 5a times a negative 2 is a positive 10a. And so there's your answer there. Okay, that's a negative 5a right here. All right. All right. Now that's one of the worksheets, and so